I'm going to introduce and turn it over to Rosalind Elemy, who is just citing to me, but citing is sad, as I'm going to say that, because she just informed me that she's not going to be working with me in a few months because she is finally retiring. And I'll have her tell you, because she is one of our most experienced registered dietitians here at Eisenhower and has a long history of providing great information and contact in healthcare to all of our patients, to the community at large. And I truly am going to miss having her face, and maybe I can even lure her back every once in a while for a lecture. We'll see. We'll see if she's willing to do that. But with that, I'm going to turn it over to Rosalind, and she'll talk to you about today's course and what she's doing. Rosalind, it's all yours.
Good morning. Welcome, everyone. Today's presentation will cover tips and reminders for keeping food safe at home when we're dining out or ordering in. Food safety is important because we want to make sure that our foods are not going to make us sick. This is pretty common in the US. It's estimated that 1 in 6 Americans each year will get sick from eating contaminated foods or beverages. That equates to about 48 million Americans each year. Unfortunately, for some, the symptoms of foodborne illness or complications related to foodborne illnesses may lead to hospitalization and, for some, even death. So how do foodborne illnesses occur? Basically, the germs are able to enter through contaminated foods or beverages, and they're able to overcome our body's defense system. The signs and symptoms of foodborne illnesses are pretty nasty or uncomfortable. It can cause nausea, vomiting, abdominal cramping, diarrhea, and sometimes even fever can be consequences of foodborne illnesses. There are many different bacteria, viruses, spores that can cause foodborne illnesses. Some of the more common foodborne illnesses we'll review. One is Salmonella. It's often associated with poultry products, unpasteurized milk, and raw produce. The symptoms, if you're exposed to Salmonella, can appear in between 6 hours to 6 days. Common symptoms include diarrhea, fever, stomach cramping, and vomiting. Another foodborne illness is Listeria, and it's often associated with raw meat, deli meats, hot dogs, raw produce. One of the severe complications of Listeria might be meningitis, and it can also have severe consequences during pregnancy. Some of the complications include miscarriage, premature delivery, or severe infections for newborns. E. coli is another common foodborne illness. Some of the initial cases that they were really able to identify as far as outbreaks occurred in ground meat products. The cases of E. coli, though, have decreased in the last 15 years by 50% because there is more regulation or oversight in processing plants for meats. More recently, they have been finding E. coli outbreaks, though, in fresh produce, particularly things like salad greens. There's been numerous recall of romaine lettuce and also sprouts. So again, it's still out there, although the cases have decreased. It seems to have migrated to more fresh produce products. Campylobacter is another foodborne illness. It can occur often in undercooked poultry. Symptoms can occur anywhere from 2 to 5 days after exposure, and the symptoms can include diarrhea, fever, and stomach cramping. Clostridium perfringens is another foodborne illness, and it's often associated during the holidays. The outbreaks typically can be traced to things like turkey, big roast. It's so you think in terms of maybe having a family dinner, and your turkey is sitting out at unsafe temperatures for an extended period of time. And you have one of your relatives who may not have the best hygiene. They go to use the restroom, they touch the turkey, and the next day when you have your turkey sandwich, you're getting sick. It's also associated with during the holidays, maybe like banquet servings of meals. They have found outbreaks in large vats of gravy, primarily because the gravy has been held at unsafe temperatures for an extended period of time. The most common foodborne illness is norovirus, and it's actually caused by a virus versus a bacteria. It accounts for about 58% of all foodborne illnesses in the United States. It can be contracted through contaminated water and foods, but it's very resilient. You can also contract norovirus by touching objects that are contaminated with norovirus, sharing utensils with someone who has norovirus, and it's very resilient. It can stay alive on surfaces for a couple weeks. It does account for the most foodborne illnesses in the US, followed by Clostridium perfringens, and Campylobacter is the third. Salmonella causes the most hospitalizations and also the most deaths. For most people, they can overcome the signs of foodborne illnesses in 1 or 2 days, and generally after a week, the symptoms have cleared completely. But if you have cases of severe food poisoning, you need to contact your health provider. Some things to look out for: vomiting so severe that you're not able to keep liquids down, if you're having episodes of bloody diarrhea, dehydration, fevers greater than 102 degrees, or diarrhea more than 3 days. Those can lead to serious complications and may require hospitalization. So particularly, anyone can get a foodborne illness, but people that are most risk are ones who have compromise in their immune system. Children under 5 have underdeveloped immune system, so they're not always able to fight off the foodborne illnesses. Anyone with a weakened immune system, maybe through chemotherapy, people on dialysis, diabetes, people with HIV, are examples of people that may be at risk for foodborne illness. During pregnancy, the immune system is altered to allow the growth and development of the fetus. And so pregnant women are particularly at risk for foodborne illness. And as I mentioned previously, like listeria is a big consequence if it's contracted during pregnancy, because it can lead to severe consequences for the baby or even the loss of the pregnancy. And finally, people over 65 are at increased risk for foodborne illnesses also, because the immune system declines as we get older. So there is more risk for foodborne illness. For people at high risk for foodborne illness, it's recommended that they're careful with their food supply. You want to make sure that meats are cooked thoroughly. Try to avoid things like unpasteurized juice, unpasteurized milk, and things like sprouts. So there's things we can do, though, to decrease our risk of contracting a foodborne illness. We want to make sure that we store our foods properly, they're properly refrigerated. Maintain proper hygiene. Make sure we're washing our hands. Preventing cross-contamination. We don't want to mix raw items with fresh produce or foods that are ready to eat. And we want to observe safe cooking times and temperatures to make sure we're keeping our food safe. So one of the best things we can do to decrease the risk of foodborne illness is to wash our hands often. It's estimated that half the cases of foodborne illnesses can be eliminated by proper hand washing. So what is effective hand washing? We want to use warm soapy water. We all kind of learned this as kids, but as a reminder, we want to make sure that we're washing our hands thoroughly. Make sure you wash the fronts, the back, upper wrists, under nails, and also make sure that we take enough time to wash your hands. 20 seconds. It doesn't sound like a lot, but as a reminder, you can do like 2 choruses, a happy birthday. Other suggestions, like for kids, you can have them recite the ABCs. So they're getting the 20 seconds then to clean their hands. And I'm not sure if it's a consequence of the recent pandemic. I looked at one study, that observational study before the pandemic. They observed only about 35% of people actually washing their hands for the full 20 seconds. But a recent study after the pandemic, they found that 63% of the people were actually washing their hands for greater than 20 seconds. The 4th step in washing hands effectively is rinsing your hands thoroughly and then drying them with a paper towel, a clean cloth, or air drying. You don't want to like dry your hands on your pants pockets because that doesn't help. You recontaminate your hands. So when do we want to wash your hands? And again, these are kind of reminders that we all learned as children: before preparing foods and before eating meals and snacks. But also we want to wash our hands after we handle any raw food items, when we're changing food preparation tasks. So if we're preparing our meats for dinner, and then we're moving on to our vegetables, we want to make sure that we're cleaning our hands first. And of course, when we use after using the restroom, if we cough or sneeze, if we're touching cuts or sores, playing with our pets, or using our phones, make sure that we're washing our hands afterwards. So the 4 steps to food safety: clean, and we did review hand washing. Separate, we want to make sure that we're keeping raw items away from fresh produce, other ready-to-eat food items. We want to make sure we're cooking our foods to safe temperatures that kill bacteria, and that we're storing food so that we're minimizing the growth of bacteria and viruses. So clean, again, we want to make sure that we wash our hands before and after preparing foods and before eating. We all want to make sure we wash our hands after handling any uncooked produce, meats, fish, poultry, eggs. We want to wash the utensils we use in food prep, cutting boards and countertops with hot soapy water. And the other thing is we want to make sure when we're rinsing, we want to rinse fresh fruits and vegetables under running water. There's no evidence that the commercial vegetable rinses are any more effective than just using plain running water. And you definitely don't want to use anything like soap or bleach to rinse your vegetables and fruits. The membranes of the produce are permeable, and you would end up consuming soap and bleach. Also, if you have like a piece of fresh fruit and you're not going to consume the skin, like an orange or banana, you still want to wash it, because once you cut into the fruit, the bacteria can enter the fruit that you're going to consume. So, the next thing we want to do to prevent foodborne illnesses is make sure that we separate, don't cross-contaminate. Make sure we're keeping the raw items away from other food items. If we're marinating meats or poultry in the refrigerator, you want to put them in the refrigerator to ensure the juices don't leak on other food items. I can say from personal experience, I was thawing my turkey and I had it on a lower shelf. But when it was really thawing out, I would generally put a platter underneath so that the juices wouldn't flow down, because the produce drawers are underneath the bottom shelf. And I forgot to do it last Thanksgiving, and I had to throw everything away, all my produce, because it was contaminated with the blood from the turkey. I did have to say that I did a thorough cleaning in my refrigerator, and it hasn't been that clean for a very long time. So again, make sure that you're keeping the juice of meats and poultry away from other food items. It's best if you have separate cutting boards for raw protein items and a separate cutting board for produce, so that you're not cross-contaminating. You just have to assume that any raw protein item have bacteria that potentially can be spread to the fresh produce and cause foodborne illness. Another thing, and I remember my mother always washing her poultry in the sink, and you don't want to do that. It can spread germs throughout the kitchen. The best way to kill germs that may be present in raw meats and poultry is to cooking them to the correct temperature. So a little video that kind of reviews why we don't want to wash our produce in sinks.
Because of the way bacteria attaches to raw meat, poultry, and seafood, Lucia will never be able to wash off all the bacteria that may be present. And during the washing, she could actually spread bacteria around the kitchen. Lucia should never wash meat or poultry. Cooking them to a safe internal temperature is the only way to be sure they are safe.
So yeah, we want to make sure that we're not spreading germs throughout the kitchen by washing produce in the sink. The other thing is to prevent it, cross-contamination. Make sure you are washing your hands if you touch anything. There was a recent study where they looked at where the most germs are in the kitchen, and interesting, they found out spice jars were the biggest contaminators. Often when you're seasoning meat, you're sprinkling on spices, and then you touch the meat and you touch the jar. And if you think about that, do you clean off that bottle before you put it back in the cabinet? So just be careful that you're not cross-contaminating. The other thing with hand washing, I forgot to mention, if you're using gloves, it's the same rules apply. If you're going between different tasks, handling raw foods and then going on to fresh produce, you want to make sure that you change the gloves. For cutting boards, like I said, it is best that you have 2 different cutting boards. You want to make sure that you clean them thoroughly after using them in hot soapy water. You can sanitize them with a very dilute bleach solution, usually 1 tablespoon of bleach to a gallon of water. If you're using plastic or acrylic cutting boards, you can place them in the dishwasher to sanitize them. And of course, you want to discard any boards with cracks or crevices, because the bacteria can kind of sneak into the cracks and crevices and cause a proliferation of germs. So cooking, you want to make sure that foods are cooked to safe internal temperatures. And you don't want to rely just on how the food looks or recommended cooking times to make sure that the foods are at safe internal temperatures. Try to use a food thermometer. If you're using the microwave for cooking or reheating foods, if you have a high power microwave, you can usually go with the minimal cooking time. If it's a lower wattage microwave, you want to go with the maximum cooking time. If you're using it to reheat foods, you want to use a food thermometer and make sure that it's reaching 165 degrees. So this is just a little poster of recommended cooking times for foods. For things like roast, usually internal temperatures of 145 degrees is recommended, and you want to insert the thermometer into the thickest parts of the roast. So for something like fish fillet, the recommended temperature is also 145 degrees. For ground beef and egg dishes is 160, and then for poultry, the recommended internal temperature is 165 degrees. Those temperatures are recommended to kill bacteria in food items. The idea is that we want to keep our foods safe by keeping them out of the danger zone. The danger zone are temperatures above 40 degrees and between 40 and 140 degrees Fahrenheit. That's the temperature range where bacteria can grow quite rapidly. Our refrigerator should be below 40. Freezers should be below 0. The holding temperature for food should be 140 and above. And you can see this just reinforces the internal cooking temperatures recommended for food products. And you can see in the danger zone between 40 and 140 is when, again, the bacteria will multiply rapidly. When foods are in a refrigerator, it doesn't actually kill the bacteria, but they don't multiply rapidly. At 32 degrees, bacteria is still present, but it does not multiply. Above 40, again, bacteria is not able to multiply rapidly. Above 160 usually will kill most bacteria at that point. So when we're storing foods, we want to keep our refrigerators at 40 degrees or below. And they do recommend that you have a separate thermometer, not just rely on the built-in thermometer in the refrigerator. And you want to keep freezers at below 0. And as I said previously, the danger zone is between 40 and 140 degrees. And what happens sometimes if you have a large pot of food or a big roast, you may want to cut it and put it in a smaller container, in a shallow container, so it cools off faster. So you minimize the time that it's in the danger zone. We don't want to keep foods out. If they're perishable, they should not be on the counter more than 2 hours. And if it's over 90 degrees, no more than an hour. And because of the time limit, you don't want to thaw foods on your counter because they're going to be in the danger zone and there's a risk for bacteria multiplying rapidly. You can thaw foods in the refrigerator, which causes, you want to make sure you're planning ahead of time. So you take them out of the freezer in time. You can do cold water to thaw foods, but it is intensive work. You have to change the water at least every 30 minutes to make sure it's not higher than the 40 degrees. So some refrigerator storage hints. You want to make sure again that you keep your meat, poultry, fish, eggs separate from produce and other ready-to-eat food items. Defrost foods in the refrigerator, preferably in cold water safely, changing the water every 30 minutes, or you can also defrost in the refrigerator. But because defrosting in the refrigerator, the foods are probably at various temperatures, you want to cook them immediately to minimize the time that it's exposed to the danger zones for foods. Make sure you keep your meats and poultries on lower shelves so they're not dripping on other food items, and don't thaw meats or fish and poultry on your counters. So this is just some hints on the recommended storage times for leftovers. And I did want to mention there's an app that's put out by the USDA. It has a very large database of foods, and it gives recommendations for storage times for many food items. Tells you how long you can keep them in the refrigerator, what's the recommended storage time, how long they can stay in the freezer. So that's available if you're just really interested in different food items. So some shopping hints. Again, just kind of reiterating, make sure when you're shopping, when you're doing your shopping cart, you want to keep the meat separate from other food items. When we're choosing meats and fish and poultry, make sure the package is not leaking or damaged, and check your eggs for any cracked shells or damaged cartons to minimize the risk of any bacterial contamination. So I have another video that just kind of reviews some shopping hints.
Fruits and vegetables, so fresh, so colorful, so delicious and healthy. We can all be healthier and improve our diets by eating more fruits and vegetables. As with any food product, you have to be careful in how you handle and prepare what you eat. It's as easy as washing your hands before touching fresh fruits and vegetables. Growers and processors are responsible for preventing bacteria in the soil or water from contaminating fresh fruits and vegetables where they're grown or processed. With fresh cut produce like bagged salads or cut fruit, make sure it's refrigerated or surrounded by ice. And don't buy bruised or damaged fruit. It's a great place for bacteria to hide and spread rapidly to the rest of the fruit. While shopping and when checking out, keep your fresh fruits and vegetables separate from meat, poultry, and seafood. And make sure you're in the right line. At home, store fruits and vegetables that require refrigeration immediately in the refrigerator, especially anything that's pre-cut or peeled. Use a thermometer to ensure that food in your refrigerator stays at 40 degrees Fahrenheit or below. We all know that we need to wash our hands after handling raw meat, and we should also wash our hands after handling produce too. Cut away damaged or bruised areas on fresh fruits and vegetables before preparing or eating. And make sure you wash the produce before you eat it, even if you plan to peel it. If it's something firm like a melon or cucumber, use a produce brush. There's no need to use soap or any kind of produce wash. Plain running water is fine. For pre-cut bagged items, look on the package. If they're labeled pre-washed and ready to eat, then there's no need for additional washing. If you're eating fruits and vegetables raw, keep them separate from foods such as raw meat, poultry, or seafood, and the utensils used to prepare them. This will help avoid cross-contamination. Use separate cutting boards for meats and produce, as well as for raw and cooked foods. And finally, wash cutting boards, utensils, and countertops with hot water and soap between the time you prepare raw meats, seafood, and poultry, and any produce that will not be cooked. For plastic and other non-porous cutting boards, just run them through the dishwasher when you're done. Nothing like a glass of orange juice to get your day started. Most of the juices sold in the U.S. are pasteurized or otherwise treated to kill harmful bacteria. But if you enjoy buying fresh squeezed juice like I do, you should know that untreated fruit and vegetable juices may contain harmful bacteria. Some stores, cider mills, or markets sell packages or containers of fresh squeezed juice that have not been pasteurized or treated to kill harmful bacteria. If you're at risk for foodborne illness like the young, the elderly, or people with weakened immune systems, it's advisable to look for a warning label on the package. Juices that are fresh squeezed and sold by the glass may not be pasteurized or treated and do not require a warning label. While normally safe, if you're at risk for foodborne illness, you should not drink unprocessed juices. Keeping these common sense tips in mind will not only improve your diet, but also help keep you and your family safe from any foodborne illness possibly associated with fresh fruits, vegetables, and juices.
Okay, so next we're going to go to reusable bag safety. We pretty much all have to use our own bags when you go to supermarkets today. And again, make sure you have a separate bag for meat and poultry as opposed to the ready-to-eat food items. One thing we can do once we get our bags at home is if you place them on a counter or a table, you want to wipe down that counter and table afterwards to prevent cross-contamination. Another thing that you want to remember to do is wash those reusable bags frequently. I've heard store clerks say like they are bagging groceries and notice all kind of contaminations in the bag. So make sure you're washing them. If they're cloth bags, you can put them in the washing machine. If they're plastic, you can wash them in hot soapy water to make sure that they're clean. Try to store them in a clean, dry location. And they do recommend that you avoid leaving the totes in the trunk of the vehicle. That one I find a little bit hard because if I don't have them in the trunk of my car, I probably won't have them because I'll forget to take them to the store. But again, it's something to think about. If you do have them in the trunk of your car, make sure that they're well cleaned so bacteria is not growing. So just some hints when we're dining out. You can always check from the county, the health department score for the restaurant. Look for safe food handling practices when you're dining out or ordering foods in restaurants or fast food establishments. I was talking to some of my coworkers, some of the pet peeves they've kind of noticed are sometimes people will wear gloves to handle food, which is fine. But then they proceed to go to the cash register, ring you up, and then go back to handling food. That's definitely not a safe food handling practice. Make sure your the foods you order are properly cooked. If you feel that the food is not at the proper temperature, just ask to have it sent back. You want to make sure foods are served steaming hot and cold food items are chilled. Another thing to look out for, if you're ordering food items that may contain raw or undercooked egg products, ask if the restaurant is using pasteurized egg products. So things like Caesar salad dressing, holiday sauce are things you want to look out for. If you're dining out and you have taking home a doggy bag, make sure it gets in the refrigerator within 2 hours. And here in the desert, if you're out and about during the day, our car temperatures can easily reach over 90 degrees. So you want to get in the refrigerator within an hour. And try not to store those leftovers for more than 3 or 4 days. Now, ordering in, and this has become more common. People are having delivery of groceries in their home. You want to make sure that you're home when the groceries are delivered. Items that are left out more than an hour can be hazardous and a risk for developing foodborne illnesses. Make sure your packages are intact. If they're not intact, just don't accept them. If you have questions or if it looks like the package may be not intact, I would not accept it. You can check the temperature of perishable foods to make sure that they are at 40 degrees or below. And notify the food delivery companies, grocery stores, if the items are not served at correct temperatures, just to keep yourself safe. If you suspect that you have if you have a foodborne illness, If you're having severe symptoms, you want to talk to your healthcare provider. Some foodborne illnesses can be detected by stool samples or blood testing. And there's a bank of laboratories throughout the country, and they keep that data, and they're able to identify potential cases of foodborne illnesses if there's an outbreak of foodborne illnesses. You want to make sure that you write down what you ate, what were you doing, other people that were with you. If you suspected something from the store, if you have a store receipt, that's very helpful for the health departments. I did include the number of the Riverside Department of Environmental Health. That is the line you can reach to report foodborne illnesses. Again, this is the end of the talk. I hope we want to keep our food safe. Enjoy your food, but you want to keep it safe. Thank you. Good resources on foodborne illnesses, food safety. I did include the websites that are available.
For you all.
Yes.
All right. Well, thank you so much. Amazing. And as I said, all this information will also be taped, recorded, and it's going to be available on multiple sites, and I will send it out to everyone who registered. But let's open it up for any questions from the audience. Feel free to unmute yourself and ask a question. I see Jack did. Jack, go ahead.
Well, it's just a comment. And it's one of my pet peeves when I go to a restaurant is I see the people that are cleaning the tables reusing the same rag or towel that they use to clean every other table. And other than leaving the restaurant, any suggestions for how to handle that situation?
I would just speak with the manager. I'm not absolutely sure the protocol, but they should be putting the cleaning cloth in the cleaning solution after each table. So they should not be going table to table using the same cloth.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions? I know I have one. So when I know we talk about hand washing and the time you need to do that, but what about for someone who says, "Oh, I can't get near a sink, I'm doing something," hand sanitizer? What does hand sanitizer do when you're in the combination of working with food?
You can use hand sanitizers. You want to definitely use hand washing if there's visible dirt, or if you're using raw items. But generally, the hand sanitizers can be a substitute.
Okay.
But preferably, hand washing is preferred.
Yeah. And another question, I know because I do this and I just learned again, so many things that I do incorrectly at home. So thank you. I think many of us did. One thing I know I do, and I just literally did it last night, and I was now looking at it going, oh my gosh. I get baked chicken, frozen chicken from different places or whatever, and then they're frozen, and I take out some, and maybe it gets down to the end of the bag, and it's defrosted enough in the fridge or whatever, but I want to drain off all the excess, whatever's in the bag with the chicken. And so I take the chicken out and I rinse it literally under the faucet before I put it onto the hot barbecue or put it into a bowl and put, seasoning and all that stuff on it. That was completely against what you were talking about. And I'm just not sure, how do you do that when you have like a bag full of the stuff that's around the chicken that you want to get rid of, but yet you want to use the chicken? Do you have a thought?
You use a paper towel and blot it.
Okay.
And then the juice, just kind of bag it up and put it in the trash can.
Got it. Okay.
I mean, if it spills into the sink, I would sanitize my sink.
Yeah. And I do have sanitizer for my boards and other things. So thank you. All right. Questions from others, please feel free to unmute and ask yourself a question. And again, if there are no further questions, we will have this all posted online. And then as you have things, of course, go to foodsafety.gov and cdc.gov. Both of those will, give you everything you need to know within the sense of food safety. Let me see here. There's a couple things in the chat. Yep. Just a thank you for a very informative presentation. So absolutely. And we might get Rosalind again for one more lecture. Who knows? I'll have to really craft something before she retires. After how many years? 33?
33 years.
33 years at Eisenhower and working in this field. And I just can think of, and I applaud you, and I wanted to thank you personally for the countless numbers of people, patients, internal to the hospital and external in our community that you have guided, educated, and affected over the many years. It's just truly astounding to me, that longevity, and that you're always still so happy and positive and loving what you do. So thank you so much.
Thank you. And I actually plan on just zooming in on some of the lectures in the future.
Oh, good. And not that you're the senior is an odd word, but the Joslin Center and many of the other centers, have so many different offerings. So we do our PD in Motion and Cathedral City. We do a lot of stuff in Mind and Balance with Joslin. There's so many things we do. So I know you're going to be busy. Take some time in retirement. All right, everyone. Well, have a wonderful, happy hump day if you are doing that. And then next week is St. Patty's Day. So eat green and green greens. And maybe that'll be part of your plan for your food. All right, everyone. Well, thank you so much. And we'll see you next week or so.